Awesome. So let's get going. Welcome to the CGIS Brief. We're talking about homestays today with the Homestay Advantage Brief. So first off, wanted to introduce ourselves and our team. So I am Callie Rouse. I am one of the Intercultural Programs Advisor at CGIS, and I am today's moderator of the whole thing. I don't know of our conversation necessarily. I think we can do that ourselves, but moderator today. So if you have any questions, I will be looking at those and answering those. So feel free to pop them into the chat or ask us questions aloud at the end. But yeah, Stephen, Ashton, you guys want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, my name is Stephen Gonzalez. I am the communication specialist here at CGIS, and my pronouns are he, him, his.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashton Troxel and I'm an Intercultural Programs Advisor at CGIS as well. And my preferred pronouns are she, her.
Awesome. Cool. So first off, getting into why should you consider homestay as an option? So one of the major things to think about is instant connection to your community and the host culture. So there is really no better way to integrate yourself into the host culture than actually living among people who live there and are part of that culture. And I think it speaks for itself that that a lot of our students come back from homestay experiences and talk really about these cool experiences that they had, and it's super unique to them. I think Ashton has a story that she shared with Stephen and I earlier about the kind of unique little things from just being able to try local dishes and watch somebody prepare it in their home, to going to niche events that foreigners don't know. Another thing to think about is language practice. If you are thinking about working on your language while abroad, this could be a really great option for you. You may be placed with a family that only knows that language or primarily knows that language, or you could set a standard of, hey, we're only going to speak Spanish or whatever in our home. It also helps avoid being on an island of Americans. This is particularly something to think about if you are going on a program where you're going to be taking all of your classes with Americans at a center or something like that. And so you won't be seeing locals in your classroom. So maybe it's a good alternative to be able to go home every day and interact with locals in your own home. In addition, as we'll speak to during this presentation, you'll be able to experience differences in family and home dynamics that you wouldn't necessarily know from just talking to somebody out and about. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thanks, Callie. So I'm really excited to talk about this today because I know when I advise students, they seem very apprehensive about homestays. They may be a requirement for the program you're going on, or you may have a choice. So maybe after you listen today, you may want to choose homestay. And we've heard great stories, we've heard bad stories and everything in between. But I think a successful relationship really starts before you even get to the country you're going to. And when you're applying, you're going to be doing a lot of logistical things. So one of those things will be the homestay questionnaire. And I cannot emphasize enough how detailed you should be here. Spend some time on it and really think about it. Our partners abroad are going to match students based on dietary, religious, or medical considerations first. And then they will start looking into, hobbies, interests. For example, I had a student who studied abroad in Grenoble, France, who was part of the rowing club here at U of M. And they were matched with a family who belonged to a rowing facility in Grenoble. So they were able to practice all summer. So something that may not seem important, definitely put it on there if it's something you like to do, whether it's yoga or running. That could be the key to success. Something else to think about are smoking preferences. I think here in the US, we're used to living in a very non-smoking society, but in a lot of European countries and Asia, people smoke a lot, even in their home. This may not be something that can be accommodated, but definitely think about it, especially if it's going to be a medical issue for you. And then finally, the family unit preference. We have students in all sort of family dynamics, whether it's a nuclear family, it's a young couple that has kids, or maybe it's a single person. Everyone is motivated to host students for a different reason. It could be that they're relying on that financial aspect of hosting, or it could be they want their children to be exposed to international mindsets and learn English. So segueing to that, bringing a gift is always great etiquette. It's not something that you have to spend a lot of money on, like $15, $20. You could go to a local gift shop downtown, get a little tea towel, a notepad that says Michigan on it. I know sometimes people want American chocolates, which can be really cost effective. I know when I went to India, they just wanted Hershey chocolate. So I just went to Sam's and spent $10 on a giant bag. But being with a host family will for sure get you out of your comfort zone. And we've shared some quotes throughout this from our past students. So I'll read these to you very quickly. A student who spent a semester in Senegal said, "The greatest strength was being fully immersed in the culture and feeling like the experience was very true to actually living in a new country." And then a student who spent a semester in Switzerland said, "I was able to connect with my host mom, a Swiss woman, who was able to teach me things about the society and culture I was unlikely to learn during only a few months abroad. I also liked living in a Swiss town and seeing more way of life versus living in a dorm with other students. My host mom was also able to help with teaching me French, which was fantastic." So as you can see, all of the reasons that we put in, why homestays are so important, the students are gaining those experiences. So thinking of like different cultural aspects of living in someone's house when you travel abroad, I think gender roles all over the world, students might find a little bit surprising. A lot of countries, women still are primary caregivers in the house. So if you're a male student traveling, they may not let you in the kitchen to prepare your food. Expectations over a lot of things may differ. Your daily schedule may have to adjust. And I think studying abroad, you have to be open to ambiguity and flexible. So for example, I got in trouble when I was staying with a host family because I took too long of showers, and I couldn't understand, what I was doing wrong, but that's when your communication skills are going to come in really important. But these families are used to hosting American students. So I think a lot of students are afraid of losing their autonomy. They want to go out with their friends in the evening. They want to travel on the weekends. And you'll be able to do all of that. You just want to communicate with your host family. So if they're expecting you home for dinner, but you're going out with your friends, that they know. Speaking of dinner, you'll actually eat a lot of traditional meals that you wouldn't even get in restaurants, which I think is really exciting. And I think people are very food motivated. So one great aspect of staying in a homestay, you'll get cultural insights that you will not get if you're staying with American students in apartments and dorms. When I studied abroad, my friend's host family invited me to, I was in France, invited me to this bal de pompier, which translated to fireman party. And I had no idea what it was, but it was the best experience of my entire study abroad. It was like a party. The local firemen hosted, and it happens throughout France. And they had a DJ that was playing Euro techno music. There were people there that were like young and old, and it was just a party. People were dancing, and the firemen do some risque dancing. You can look it up on YouTube if you're so inclined. But yeah, I would not have known that if I was living with Americans. And then finally, respecting traditions, social viewpoints, even if you don't agree. We have a great quote from a student here. My host family didn't really understand the concept of the hijab. So they would come into my room with no warning sometimes while I wasn't wearing it. But I talked to a program advisor on site, and he helped me communicate my discomfort to the host family, and they were very accommodating afterwards. So I think this is a great example of reciprocal exchange. When you're going abroad, you are learning a lot, but the host community can learn from you as well.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about things you may have to adjust to. So I will skip the bathing schedule because that's something that Ashton talked about already, that you may expect to be a little shorter on the showers. I know I had a friend in high school who took hour-long showers, which I thought was crazy for here. That would not fly in a lot of European households, absolutely not, especially because they tend to have smaller water heaters. So that water is very precious. But things you may have to adjust to. So air conditioning, we are blessed that we have lovely air conditioning in many of our homes here in the US. That's not so typical in a lot of other places in the world. And so you may need to get used to the idea of, just having your windows open and maybe putting a fan in the window, or needing to get out of your hot apartment, and things like that. Another thing that's different is laundry. So you may be lucky and have a in-house washing machine, but it is unlikely you're going to have a dryer. It is pretty typical to just have a drying rack that you like fold out and put all of your clothes onto. So if you're anything like me, and you like rush last minute to do your laundry all at once, that's not as great of an idea with this, because you still have to get your clothes to dry. You don't want to be like frantically putting it in front of the heater being like, please be not wet anymore. So make sure you allot time for that, and also make sure you're allotting time and communicating with your host family about using the rack, because it does take like a day or so for things to get all fully dried. Personal space, we tend to have very large, not even like personal bubbles, but also like physically spaces that you have to yourself are very large here in the US. That is not nearly as typical in a lot of other places. Like in Europe, there's a lot of really old buildings and they're pretty crammed in there together. And so you may end up living in, a room that's smaller than your dorm room here at the university. So that's something to consider, that you may need to adjust to. Diet as well. You may see that they're a lot more heavy in meats and potatoes and things like that. Or they're much more vegetarian than you are. So it's good to research the diet ahead of time and get a gauge for what is typical to have at home. In addition, dining times is different. Particularly if you're in the Mediterranean area, they tend to have pretty late dining. So like in Greece, like they eat out like at 10 p.m., which is just insane to me. I would not do well with that, but like knowing that like, hey, like your dinner is going to be pretty late, and adjusting to that as well is also important. And just communication style. They may not speak English, and so you may have to work with like you're learning the language you're learning and nonverbal cues. They may be quieter and more reserved than you, and the way they communicate and the way they feel is respectful behavior may look like rude behavior to you. And so it's really important to look into those cultural information as you can beforehand, and also give some grace that, you know, like maybe they're not intentionally being rude to you. We just like, this is how they normally talk with somebody and it's a little brusque or something like that. That it's good to kind of think through those differences and communicate openly about them. So one student here said, the food portion was extremely small. I always felt hungry after meals because I was never given enough. The student in Spain. So that is something to consider. Like if you feel like you're not, I mean, it's not matching, this may be like it's something that's like consistently a problem for you and you feel like you want to like move to a different place. Or it could just be something where like you supplement with foods. You can try to kind of think about the strategy and like, why do they eat less? Do they eat more often through the day or things like that?
It reminds me of when we had sent like a few football players abroad. Do y'all remember hearing this story? And
Yes,
like
I
they weren't
remember.
being fed enough because they were used to eating like thousands of calories, and they needed to like ask like the host families to cook more for them just so that they weren't going to bed starving.
Yes, I recall. Yeah, if you're an athlete, that's definitely something to consider. Like, are they going to be able to accommodate to your diet? Maybe makes sense to live with somebody who's also super athletic, so they can kind of match you. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit how you can overcome some of these challenges. I think if you've probably, based off what Ashton and Callie have already talked about, the overarching theme of this, all of this is to communicate, right? But first and foremost, you need to know that if you're participating in a CGIS program, you will have on-site support there for you while you're abroad. And these are our off-campus partners who are help facilitating, your program, making sure, like, for example, Ashton mentioned earlier about a homestay questionnaire, right? They're the ones that are going to be playing that instrumental role in placing you based off any, like she said, hobbies or concerns that you might have. And they'll be able to help you in case any issues that arise. So for example, some of like the worst case scenarios would be like discrimination, right? If you're experiencing racism, homophobia, etc., within your homestay, that's something that you're going to want to bring up. You're going to want to bring that up to not only CGIS, but your on-site support system, so we can help you figure out how to get you to a new location, right? This has certainly happened before. And this is not to scare you by any means, but we have been able to successfully navigate those students to other host families where there were no longer any more concerns of this kind of discrimination. I know, speaking of the homestay questionnaire, I had this example of a student that I always remember his story because it was a really positive story, but it really spoke to why it's important to fill out those questionnaires, or to address any concerns that you might have with CGIS ahead of time, so prior to departure. And basically he had put in his homestay questionnaire that he really wanted to be with a pro LGBTQ family, so that he would feel comfortable being himself when he's abroad. And they were, between CGIS and our on-site partners, we were able to get him into a homestay where his host mother was, very pro LGBTQ plus. She had many friends within the community that she would, invite over for little get-togethers so that he could feel comfortable in her home. And, he really attributes that to being able to successfully, because what he was trying to say was, when you go abroad as an LGBTQ plus person, you're essentially coming out again, right? Like if you're out here in the States, now you're going to a new environment where you have to come out again. And his host mother was really able to help ease that transition from the States to France. He was actually studying abroad in France. So if, should anything come up, make sure you're staying in contact with us. CGIS has a health and safety team that's specifically there and available, as well as the University of Michigan has their own team, and you have we're accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, should anything come up. So, we'll always make sure to be there for you all. And then just to kind of reiterate, reemphasize that, all these relationships that you'll be forming, it takes effort. I think everything that Callie was just talking about in the previous slide, like, yeah, those are just like little culture shifts, right, that you're going to experience, but you'll be surprised how quickly you can adjust if you give it the space and you put in the energy to really, challenge yourself. We learn a lot through shared experiences, and Ashton kind of mentioned it a little bit. There's a lot of room for that cultural exchange, for them to learn more about you and for you to learn more about them.
Yeah, and I would emphasize particularly the point of like, let us know if there's something up, if there's something going wrong that doesn't work well for you, if you're going through some challenges. We can talk through, like the on-site staff is really great to help talk through, like, where could the cultural barrier be? Where could the miscommunication be? Like with the student who was Hijabi and like was able to kind of like bridge that gap. But if there is like serious issues, like we want to know about it now, and we don't want to, it's terrible when we hear about it and like an evaluation at the end. Like I had a rough time because I was discriminated against by my family. And we're like, oh my God, we wish we could like have known like during the program so that we could have adjusted things for you and made it better.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, a student had, gone abroad for a few weeks, and she had been she had like an autoimmune disorder, or she had a dietary restriction, I think, and she had, gone a couple of weeks without letting anybody know that this was happening, and she was, very concerned. And we heard about it probably like 2 weeks prior to when she was supposed to come back, and of course we were able to get her accommodations right away. But like, it's something that, if you just let us know, we can help out as like ASAP.
Awesome. So we're going to wrap up here. I would like to say also, in addition to Ashton, I have also had an informal homestay experience myself, and where I was able to stay with somebody who was an alumni of my college in her home for 3 weeks. And it was a wonderful situation. I had originally opted in college to do an apartment. I wanted to have my own space and things like that. But I found out after, staying with hers for a year later for a research experience, that it was actually really wonderful. And I was able to eat with them and their family and their friends and learn about so many different things, and be introduced to so many cool people through them. So I really highly recommend it. It's not for everyone, I will say, like some people, it just isn't a good fit. But I think it's really important, and what kind of like the core of this is to make sure you don't write off homestay as something that is going to be too stressful and too controlled and things like that. It can be a really wonderful, positive experience that can be the highlight of your time abroad. Let's see, do we have any questions? So where do you find info on the programs? So you can either look on the CGIS website, which is, I can type it in here, and also on mCompass is where you can look as well, which is mcompass.umich.edu, and you can find all of our different programs. If you are specifically looking into a program that is a homestay, you can look under like the need to know information on each of our programs, and it will say like what kind of housing options are available. Yeah, and thank you, Stephen.
I had a question come in as well. I'm graduating in winter 2022. I was planning on doing a homestay in summer 2022. Would it be possible even if I am already graduated? So students who go abroad as seniors would have to delay their graduation to the summer term. So like August 2022, if you wanted to go on a CGIS program.
All right, so we'll finish off for today. I wanted to talk about our upcoming session, which is religious practice abroad. It's going to be in 3 weeks from now, skipping a week due to Thanksgiving. Same time, same link. And so we're going to be talking about how do you keep to your religious practices while abroad. I think that a student with hijab is a really great consideration, and thinking about talking about this even more in detail. But yeah, otherwise, thank you guys for joining us so much, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.